One of the things that I've realized working with PM Web, because I knew a lot of other different PMIS systems that I implemented, is the it's highly customizable, and you can customize it to your need, to your workflows, and kind of define like different forms and inputs and so forth that other softwares that I've tried usually lack that, or they're very difficult to do that. So they tell you that you can customize it. Actually, I had the experience of using a software for the DoD project, for example. I knew that they're using a certain type of forms, and they require certain workflows and so forth. And we tried it with the other organization that was saying that they can customize it, but they weren't able to satisfy the need, especially that for the owner type organizations. PM Web has the full life cycle kind of work that you can do to customize your needs and so forth. So to me, having a big database like what PM Web is just having databases interconnected and workflows automated to do your mundane task is actually the benefit of using a PMIS system like this. So you don't have to enter a lot of that information multiple places and try to extract it when you need it. So I really like this workflow visualization that you have at the bottom and how you can use that visual. Can you explain a little bit more about that workflow visualization at the bottom?
Sure, yeah. So that's, like I said, well, that's one of our powerful pieces of PM Web, is being able to build workflows based either on a visual builder or on a step-by-step builder. So this one is fairly easy. This one's just got a couple of steps. It's going to a project engineer and then to a project manager. So you predefine those, what your workflow would be for the different record types, and you can even have multiple different workflows by record type. So you can have a commitment for a workflow for like construction, or I'm sorry, electrical contracts versus maybe design contracts versus whatever. And through our visual workflow, then you can see exactly where you are in the process. Even within this record, it says, I'm going to move some things around. So even like the workflow, it says it's in step 1 of 2. And we can see on screen what step that is in, as well as visually on the bottom of the screen. And we can flip this between, all right, what's the actual role name, or who's assigned to that role. We can see some more information as far as instructions, given some more information. And it also then keeps a detailed log of those actions as well. So where it got submitted, it's in step 1, and all the actions will have a time and date stamp of when the actual action is performed. And then we can use all that and pulling that into, we have very robust reporting. We have over 250 stock reports that we provide out of the box with PM Web. And then, of course, able to provide customers with custom reports as well. So even just from a workflow standpoint, you can see where your project is as far as where my workflow, what work is in progress, where is it sitting, when is it due, what step is it in. This is just one of the many out of the blocks reports that we provide, being able to see exactly where all of your information is, whether it's commitment, a change request, an RFI, etc. Within a few clicks, you can get all that information right on screen. And then focusing back on the workflow itself, the engine in which to build these workflows is very simple. It's a drag and drop kind of interface. You can, like I said, either choose to use a just a linear kind of drag and drop. Okay, it's going to go to this person first and then that person next type of situation, or you can use our visual designer. You can say, okay, well, I need a step here. I need a step here. Oh, and then maybe I need a branch in here because of a specific, you know, we only want it to go to that person if it is a over a certain amount. And then you can just easily plug in who that needs to go to, and away you go.
I love this feature in PM Web. Anybody else in the panel has experience? I think Brian mentioned that he used the PM Web in other projects. Brian, what are some of the features that you like, or maybe the benefits of using PM Web? And maybe Marcia can show us those as well for construction.
Yeah, I'll, Marcia, if you don't have Cal State's permission for the logo, you should look for it, because they're, I know that they're a big user, and it's interesting sort of working at a university within a larger system, right? We have some autonomy at the campus level to manage our projects within our budgets, but then as a system, they have to be able to know globally where everything is at. And so we have certain things we must do. And one of those is PM Web reporting for all of our major projects. So they have, it's customized to the way they want, but it's standardized for us as the downstream recipients of that. So every quarter we have to go in and provide milestone updates, and they've developed this custom report for us to input that. So what was your original timeline for planning, design, construction, closeout? Same thing for cost, and how are you currently trending towards? What's your status? What's the next step? Give us a little narrative. And then they bring that into an overall portfolio report that they can look at both university and the system as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, it's almost unlimited what you can do with a system like ours. We give you so much out of the box that you could just start using it, already 80% kind of there. But then you can go even further to, we can add additional fields, different UDF specs, anything like that. And that's just all built in as being able to implement that, as well as then being able, we have a huge development department that is, even after all the stuff that we can do just out of our basic implementation, we can even, if need be, we can even take that a step forward because we have our own in-house development team to further develop the software for a specific need.
Thank you, Marcia. I just want to let everybody know that we're at the end of the presentation, and if they have any questions and they want to participate in the discussion, they're more than welcome to turn on their mics and videos and ask questions from our panelists. But I have a few things to mention, especially about what Brett was talking about, like in GSA projects, government type projects. We have data issues and concerns. How secure is that, and how can we kind of mitigate that challenge when we have, for example, separate departments trying to communicate with each other on the data that they don't want to maybe share all the database? Is there a solution to that within PM Web where we can create some kind of common kind of pool database or something that we can have multiple organizations share the data that they want within PM Web, and instead of all the stuff, or integrate all their data into PM Web?
All right, so that's a good question. And I'm thinking of a couple different fronts in which to do that. Of course, depending on how you're managing your security, who you're letting into your system, and what they can see and share. Again, that can all be managed with different different security groups, and also through like your document manager, what kind of information you want to share from there. Yeah, so I kind of lost my train of thought there for a moment. Can you
that's okay. We were just talking about the databases and how they're shared, and you can segregate that within PM Web and trying to create some kind of a pool database where not all information needs to be transferred from one entity to another. However, you can kind of share that database across multiple departments without having concerns about data security or breach and things like that.
Yeah.
So That was
Yeah,
that,
that's
that
what I
was one
would
of the
do is
challenges
have,
that we're facing actually with our implementation, is that different departments that are not using PMWeb, we're using it for construction project life cycles, and then other entities are having difficulties trying to integrate their apps into our into PMWeb. But I believe that one of the strengths of PMWeb is having that database shared, and instead of all the information to integrate between the different multiple
yeah, for
platforms.
that, there's actually a couple different options. You may even want to consider a data warehouse that we could have the data warehouse live right alongside the PMWeb database and have that data from that other systems dumped into that database. Or through our BI reporting, we can actually even have set up different data sources besides the PMWeb database. And you can actually run a report from inside PMWeb that's actually pulling from another database. So there's lots of different things that we can do. Or you can have, maybe if one of your other systems is using like Power BI, we could publish that Power BI report within PMWeb. Or we can have BI reports that actually pull from 2 different data sources. So there's so much you can do and so much flexibility within that. But as far as just a straight, really wisely set up your security groups to, hone in on what this group of users needs to do. Maybe when they log in, maybe the only thing they have is access to the document manager, or maybe certain reports, or something to that effect. You can really narrow down and secure what a person sees and what they can and can't do in PMWeb through the different security settings and so forth.
Exactly. Sounds very good. Thank you, Marcia. I appreciate it. Another challenge that we're facing actually with our organization and our implementation is that we have people that come to the implementation team and they leave without doing a proper transition. So as mentioned, I think Steve was mentioning that this is actually a change project management, meaning that you have to look at it as a project rather than just implementing a software or purchasing a software. You need to have the team work together throughout the entire phase of implementation. And as people come in and go, the difficulties we're having right now is that people don't have the buy-in, or they don't own the system once they come to this new, and they're like, okay, let's start over, and why don't you explain all this stuff to me and let me see if I truly believe in this. So having a third party entity that has the contact of implementing this or consulting the team into this thing would kind of alleviate some of that, I believe, where we can have a consistency of change management and project management in the implementation. And maybe you can speak a little bit about it, and then I wanted to hear maybe Brian and Steve and Bert also add their thought to it. So go ahead, Marcia. I think this is a nice graph that you have.
Yeah, so just gonna flip back a little bit. It's like I'm just pulling up, this is part of our kickoff kind of slide deck, that we really have a firm but flexible a methodology that we use for implementing our software. And and that's kind of what we have here is
screen, because it's a little small.
Oh, sure.
On my screen.
Let me
Yes.
make it a little bit bigger here. Yeah, so it's like, you want to start a new process, you want to get people engaged, but of course they kind of they get scared and they quit or they drop out and oh no, we're not going to do that, it's too hard, it's going to take too much time. But if you can really keep them engaged and really have that high level buy-in that says, okay, well, I hear you, but you're going to do it anyway type thing, then you can get them past that scare point and really at the end of the day really improve their performance and make everybody more productive. So they're not spending, especially if they're not even coming from another software, maybe they've just been doing everything in Excel for years and years and years, that they feel like, oh, well, having to enter data into a system takes longer than just entering in Excel. Okay, I won't argue with that, but then how long does it what kind of visibility does your Excel have? How long does it take you to compile a report from all these different Excel sheets and this different Excel data? Where once you may spend a little more time on the front getting the data into your system and having those checks and balances that it's in and correct. But then at the end of the day, it only takes you 2 clicks to get that report out of the system. So you're spending a lot less time, reporting. And then along the way, there's so much more visibility and accessibility and so much more that you can do with a PMIS system like PMWeb. So, and like I said, we take more of an agile approach when we are doing our implementations. We take it piece by piece, make sure that up front we've got the team is identified. We get everybody on the call, we come together, pre-COVID, we'd always do on-site discovery, get everybody together in a room for a few days to make sure they really understand their roles and responsibilities. And then we go ahead and release certain parts of the software, whether you want to do it a big bang where we're going to release all of cost management at once, or if you want to just get people in and used to the system. Okay, we're just going to release budgets for now. And then we have our end user support and our help with the end user training. Although we tend to take a train the trainer approach, we want to train just their SMEs and their in-house trainers and get them self-sufficient and own it and learn the software so that they become their first level of support within their organization and not always having to rely on PMWeb support.
All right.
Marcia, can you go back to slide 16? Because Hari, I think speaking to this, one of the key things here is getting people to understand that Instate exists and how to communicate that to them. And it's very hard for an outsider or somebody who is not necessarily, that is a trainer that's coming in just to train on software, to really speak to the benefits of going through that dip, right? Going through the hard part of this and getting to that end state. And so, it's things like telling people, not just, oh, it's going to take more time than you used to do in Excel, but hey, you want to move up, right? You want to move on to another job, a bigger job, something else. When you go to move from one project to the other, if you're using Excel, you then have to explain to your replacement, spend a bunch of time explaining to your replacement how all you're tracking all of this in Excel, versus if you have a standardized method for putting all of this data into a solution like PMWeb or any of the other project management solutions. If it's if it is a repeatable and transferable process, it's much easier for you to take that project executive job or for you to get that, that next thing. So I think it's all about how you message that dip in terms of how you move folks forward to realizing the opportunity that's there and the why that's a piece of that. And so, and then the other thing, that Marcia mentioned, and that this is totally true of all of the project management solutions, they do want to take a train the trainer approach. They want to hand this off to you. They really, they're in the process of selling software and handing it off. And so you need to make sure that within your organization, you have someone to hand it off to, whether that's some support, contractual support, or an internal group of folks for your team. That's the investment that you have to make for this thing to be successful. Because if there's nobody to hand it off to, if the expectation is that a project manager is going to become the trainer, they still have their job, right? They're not going to have time to train the next person to do that. So you within your organization have to make sure that you have those folks set aside to be able to be the change, to be the trainer, be the, the person that keeps this momentum moving forward, because that's where most of these fail, is because they don't have that infrastructure in place to really take it on. It's not the technology, it's the change.
Yep. Yeah. That's what I always say. It's one of my, it's not, I've heard you guys say it in a lot of different ways, but my catchphrase is champion the change. You need to be the hero. You need to champion it. You need to be the person, that's going to champion this change, because yeah, there is light at the end of the tunnel and it's going to be a great thing. And just helping your you know, helping your internal organization and just the people within your own department. It's like, you know, you acknowledge that, yeah, it's going to be difficult at first, but it's really going to be great at the end. You got to, you know, you got to be that cheerleader and, you know, keep that motivation going when they get into that dip.
Carrie, I know we're short. Give me 30 seconds here. Going back to Bert's analogy about the Peloton, right? It's not enough to buy a Peloton. Why Peloton works so well is there's coaching involved, there's peer reinforcements involved. You know, it's not just buy solution, magic occurs, and we're better. There has to be that driving force. And in the case of my case study, that healthcare organization, they hired an internal employee just to do the day-to-day management of that e-builder. And it doesn't always have to be an internal employee. You can strike an ongoing or a retainer relationship with an outside firm who can be that constant as you have changes in employment, which are unavoidable. And the other big thing that I think could help me minimize that dip that Marcia showed, Steve has a really great case study where they designed with that last mile in mind. They started with the actual building maintenance staff and made a solution that they loved. And the managers were lukewarm on the whole change until they saw how much the end users embraced it. And then suddenly everyone loved it, right? So just going back to the why, making it downhill, making it just wildly beloved by those users, and then having someone whose job is not anything else that they have to manage, but who has that support and that commitment to be the management of this change.
And for one of these things to work, it has to continue to iterate and it has to continue to grow. And the developer or the vendor is not always going to be there for that. So you have to have an infrastructure in place to support that piece, whether, you know, so I think that is a critical component to any successful implementation of a tool like this.
And those quick wins, I think that's going to win your users, because when they see the quick wins as soon as something is implemented, they'll get excited for the next iteration. So both topics are great, where you have to have a implementation team and consultant to guide you through it. And as Bert says, if you have internal team such as like a quality committee or quality implementation PMO, that's what we call, to continue the next iterations and keep being the champion of the process or the change, that'd be great. What is this one, Marsh? You want to speak a little bit about
yeah,
this?
so this is kind of, you know, kind of just a realm of, you know, okay, so who are the stakeholders in this process, in you know, choosing and implementing the software? Of course, you've got like your executive, but you've also got just your general internal and external users, and maybe your you know, departments. And then inside that, you need to have, you know, your, in our case, the PM web owner. Who is that, you know, that person that is always kind of the sponsor or owner of PM web in the company, and or as well as like the executive sponsor and so forth. And then you have your core team. You know, these are the people that are, for us, these are the people that are with you in the trenches while we're implementing. But then on the other side, you'll still have these people that are in, you know, we recommend, like you said, having a dedicated PM web admin. Maybe, you know, at first it may be a higher percentage of their time, but as things kind of settle and time goes on, they don't necessarily have to be 100% dedicated, maybe 50-50, maybe 20-80. You know, and or having a staff. Like many of the companies that I work with, they already have an IT staff, and they just bring in, and that IT staff takes on the role of the PM web administrators, with maybe one or two of them more specialized in PM web. And of course, your super users, which we usually recommend being the trainers. We usually don't bring in a third party to train, because you really want your super users to be your, you know, your trainers. And then if you're lucky, you may also have your own in-house report developers. So, and we go through and kind of talk about the responsibilities of each one of these different roles, you know, while we're kicking off the project. You know, so it's known up front, you know, what kind of the expectations are with, you know, different pieces of that core team.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, everyone. Any final thoughts before we leave the meeting? Because we're kind of over the time for 5 minutes, but if you guys have any final thoughts, this would be the moment to add to the discussion. Otherwise, we're going to keep discussing these things. Hopefully, after we publish the recordings, people will definitely reach out to you, and they're going to keep asking more questions, and then we communicate through LinkedIn. So watch for those questions coming to your LinkedIn Messenger. So hopefully we'll continue these discussions in future as well. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see you in June when we get back again for another CQM event. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye for now.